Sorry, I just had to catch my breath for a few seconds because this is a very emotional issue for me, considering it involves a certain addiction that I've been overcoming for the last 16 years. I do have a porn addiction. That's the short form of the story. Yeah, I'll go into that a little bit more in detail later. So basically, talking about basic, as in basic needs, sexuality is such a very basic need, and that's the reason why, in relation to my issues growing up, it's important to address that, there is, there is an emotional element to it as well as a physical. And for me, it's like even just the need to wanting to be held and touched and cared for are things that I really, quite often need in my life, because, of how, I lost my mom to pneumonia 10 years ago, and she was suffering with all sorts of physical and mental and emotional issues before that, years before that. So, so she's definitely left some karmic debt on my life that I've had to really, really, work with, some very, very dense, shadowy material that I've had to bring out from the astral plane and to restore into my emotional consciousness. And I've been seeing what is called a Somatic Experiencing Therapist for the last it's been about 6 months now, because it was in March, to be exact, that I first visited this man who holds his practice out in the Brown Deer area. And somatic experiencing is basically a modality, a bodywork modality that was pioneered by Peter Levine back in the 60s. His book, Waking the Tiger, definitely a great book, for anybody who wants to read up more on this and understand what it's all about. It's basically helped me a great deal to recover from the trauma and the loss of my mother, which has surfaced as a symptom of just numbness, not able to feel anything. And being a spiritual person as I am, going inward and exploring, my inner world, it all comes down to feeling. So, any work that I do on my chakras, any trance work that I do when I'm in a meditative state, it all requires being in emotional equilibrium. So that's where the somatic experiencing has provided a great base, a great safe grid for me to work off of, for which I could learn to work with, any sort of unknown energies and, sudden emotional bursts that surface now and again. Now where my pornography addiction comes into this, well, this too is part of my karmic debt, I believe. After all, I've got my moon sign in Aries in my 8th house, so I'm not at all sure whether or not this was derived directly from my mom, at least in the pathology that has followed me around, but I know for a fact that, just taking responsibility for my own parental programming right now and not projecting any blame on my parents, I'm just going to focus on the problem that I have at hand and not whatever problems I may have inherited from my mom's gene pool or whatever, because that's all past and gone now, and I can't place blame anymore on anyone else when it's my personal evolutionary journey that I have to work on. So this porn addiction started when I was 16. Yeah, it's been going on for that long, 16 years. And that's why I'm seeing this somatic experiencing therapist. I've had to cut certain friends out of my life because they have, agitated that itch that has often led to that addiction. And, it's like, whatever fetishes, whatever fantasies I've had that, I would always look up on the internet and try to find some sort of pornographic imagery to satisfy that fantasy with, it all comes from this basic need to be loved, which has been very, very much deprived of within me, and because I can't look for love outside of myself anymore, I have to look at it from within. And also, of course, I guess I messed that up. What I meant to say was that, I have to look within first to find true love, and then allow myself to accept love coming from others too, in order to help to fill up, to elevate that love upwards, higher and higher up the ladder of the spinal column, which is my chakra system. And that is something that pornography has taken away from me. Pornography has resulted as a result of, just being unable to express that healthy, childlike, savage innocence towards a woman, in which, I'm drawn, say, first of all, to how beautiful her feet are, or the fact that, she walks around commando with no underwear under her skirt and it's a windy day outside, those sorts of things that really, really turn me on, but also get me really excited too. And that right there is second chakra issues too, sacral chakra, which is of course ruled by Venus. I was once told by an energy worker when 3 years ago that I had overinflated sacral chakra. It's not hard to see why. Now my Venus is in Gemini in my chart, and it's in my 10th house, my midheaven. So, being that is a very, very public planet, now I've gone off on, these massive, flirtatious, romantic, escapist fantasies, where it's like I get excited about a certain girl. It only lasts for like a burst of a second, and then it's like I move on to the next girl. And then sometimes it's like, if I'm just unable to assert myself, in a behavioral pattern that, can create a certain attraction rather than a repulsion, then it's like, in the wake of my inability to be able to approach a beautiful girl confidently and without my mind freezing up, as far as processing the right thoughts and the right words. In light of that failure, that's where I've fallen back on pornography material. And it has definitely muddied up my soul and buried it quite often. And it's no wonder, of course, that my solar plexus chakra, ruled by Mars, which is in Capricorn in my 5th house, has been greatly blocked, which has been, of course, blocking access to the heart chakra, which is ruled by Jupiter in Pisces in my 7th house, which is responsible for that gateway that opens me up to the higher chakra realms where, the three-dimensional sexual experience, the animal experience, the 4th dimensional, transcendental experience of sexuality become merged together and conjoined together in this beautiful marriage. So, but what about the root chakra, which is the home of Mercury, which is in Aries in my 8th house, along with my moon in the same sign? I have those problems as far as just maintaining security, and just knowing how not to be deceived, just because a certain woman is hot, it doesn't, it can also, manifest as like a fever dream, as like a trick of the mind, a delusion to get me to believe that, the woman that I am very, very much attracted to is in fact going to be the one. And of course, on at least 3 different occasions, it seemed more than just an animalistic impulse. Now I can name like maybe 10 or even 20 girls and maybe recall their names, recall the time and the place that I used to, that I remember, just, trying to talk smoothly with, trying to flirt with, and again, that's my Venus and Gemini right there. And I can tell you that most of those girls never lasted for any more than just a moment in my life. And then the magic would just fizzle out. And that's my Chiron afflicting Venus too, which is also noticeable in my chart. It's like my ability to really, really stretch my mental muscles and to engage in very, very